Hello and welcome to The Breathing Room. I'm Rita Date, your host. I'm a yoga and meditation coach, writer, and nutritionist. On this show, we talk about M&M, mind, nutrition, movement, 3 pillars for a healthy life. On the show, you will find practical information, all backed by science, so stay tuned. Welcome back to The Breathing Room. This is part 2 with Moushumi Kuvawala. She is a physical therapist and the owner of Moshu's Pilates. Part 1 talked all about movement, physiotherapy, and how she uses both physiotherapy and Pilates in her helping rehabilitate people with injuries. And part 2, right now, we're going to talk about the pelvic floor. It's something that is rarely talked about, but millions of women suffer with pelvic floor issues, and Moushumi has also specialized in pelvic floor physiotherapy. And welcome, Moushumi, again.
Thank you again, Rita, for having me here. Yes.
So I think this is a very important topic. What is a pelvic floor physiotherapist?
Okay. So a pelvic floor physiotherapist is someone who assesses pelvic floor conditions and provides programs and treatments for it. Pelvic
So what
floor
are the
health issues.
Yeah.
So pelvic floor is basically, when you think of the pelvic floor, it's the muscles, okay, which form the floor of the pelvis. And the pelvis and I'm going to talk about it from the women's health right now, but it equally applies to men. So it's like your bowl, the bony cavity, and it houses 3 different organ systems. So we have the bladder, we have the uterus, and then we have the rectum. And just below that and around that is a whole muscular closure, okay, which is kind of holding it in place.
So that is called the pelvic floor. So that's the floor.
So it's they're basically called the pelvic floor muscles, right? Or we're talking about the pelvic health or the pelvic organs. So different ways of putting that in. And then I'm sorry, what was the next question on that?
No, that was the question.
That was the question.
What is the pelvic floor? What do you mean? But what are the problems people come with?
So what physiotherapists do would be to assess the pelvic floor health, right? The people who, so what are the different conditions that we would see?
Well, they wouldn't come to you unless they had a problem, right? Usually people...
I think usually people may not even relate it, right? So, because one main condition is pelvic pain.
Okay.
All right. So, though it's called pelvic pain, it could be, it could show up like low back pain, but the problem is in the pelvic health. So that's one area, that's pain. Then we have these organs which aren't being held by the pelvic floor muscles, and they can sort of come out of this cavity, and they're called prolapses. So you have different prolapses in which there is a projection of this organ tissue from your perineum. And the third is different conditions of incontinence. So these are the broad areas, right? And of course there are many, many more. But I'm just putting it into this broad structure. So we have incontinence, which is a leak, right? So you could have a leak, urinary leak, or a leak from your rectum, right? So that's your fecal issue. So these are some of the areas that you would see. What is really, really common, and I think what women think that because it's so common, nothing needs to be done about it, is the incontinence.
They think it's part of aging.
Right. So they would be not even aging. I think they think that it's okay. This happens, right? And a lot of times you will find women starting out with, oh, sometimes when I cough, there is a urinary leak or a urinary incontinence. And then you say, oh, but do you know that, it can be resolved. You don't need to live with it. And they're like, oh, really? I thought it's normal. So you're like, no, it's not normal. Why is it normal? Right? And the other issue, so when we're talking about when you cough or when you sneeze or when you're lifting heavy weights, so that comes under what's called stress incontinence. You're stressing with some load, and that poses to be a problem. But the real problem is the health of the pelvic floor muscles, right? And just by doing what we call pelvic floor muscle training, it changes the picture. So you don't need to suffer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that Kegels is this part of
Kegel was a person who described certain exercises, and that's why I think the name generically has come as Kegels exercises. But we're working on, a pelvic floor specialist, especially a physiotherapist, and I'm not going down the road of prolapses and the other conditions, and I'm just going to keep this conversation around incontinence, because it's easier to talk about. Prolapses would need
some medical intervention?
Not necessarily, sorry. But it would need a thorough examination, and then depending on the level of the prolapse, it would need some intervention or not, right? So I'm not going down that because that's really, really long in terms of this conversation. But let's say a person has a problem with the pelvic floor muscles. One of the symptoms would be incontinence, right? That incontinence could be related to stress. So when you apply stress, and it could just be for other various reasons, the muscles aren't working well. The urinary, from where we pass urine, so the urethra opens out along a sphincter. So these sphincter muscles, which are circular muscles, don't have a good open and closing, then there could be a leak. So then we have to look at, so there is a complete assessment that needs to be done. We just don't jump to conclusions with this, right? And it requires a step-by-step assessment. It requires monitoring. It requires many other things. But let's put it in a very general perspective. So if the pelvic floor muscles are either slack or they have lost their tone, they are weakened, and also if they're too tight, you could have any of these problems. Okay. So yes, a lot of times the tight component is being missed because people think, I'm good with my pelvic floor. And sometimes if you overdo pelvic floor muscle training, they become tight.
Okay.
And then they give you other problems. And pain could be one of the problems that could be because of pelvic floor muscle tightness.
I see.
Pain anywhere because of a tightness, right? So that's where it goes into. We work with training these muscles. Again, like I said, after an assessment. So
how do you do the assessment? I mean, you can't see anything. Really.
No. So the assessment is. It requires a specialist to do it because it does involve like an invasive kind of assessment. So we are assessing the pelvic floor health into the pelvic space.
I see. Okay.
Right. So it's not. I can't see your pelvic floor, and even if I teach you how to work it, I'm not sure if you're doing it right. Right. Okay. Because so what we look at, let's say we aren't doing the internal assessment. And we're just talking about pelvic floor health because that's probably what might work for today's conversation. We want to check for sure if there's an overcorrection. And that happens is when you talk about engaging from the pelvic floor. So let's talk about how to engage the pelvic floor first, right? So the pelvic floor muscles are sitting on this base of this bowl, and they tend to go front and back and side to side, just for a very, again, I'm super simplifying this, right?
No, it's good. We need to simplify it to understand it.
So we have our pubic bone in the front, we have our tailbone at the back. And at these two ends, we have our two sitting bones. So if you're sitting on your buttock, you can feel a little bone. So those are called your sit bones. So pubic bone, tailbone, and two sit bones. So if you look at it, it's forming a cross. Now, the way the muscles work is they bring it all in together, and then as you contract, lift up. Right? So that's your bowl. You bring the base or the floor of the bowl in, and you do a lift up.
When you contract.
When you contract, right? Or it assists a lift up. So it's holding these three organs that I talked about, and it's lifting up. So that's how you train the muscles.
Okay.
Okay, so we work a lot with visualizations, okay, because it's a hard space. So one of the, I'm going to use this tissue right here. So one of the ways I describe this exercise is imagine your pelvic floor muscles are tissue, a tissue paper lying on the floor, and you want to pick it up. So you want all these four ends to come together, and then you want to draw it up. So let's have you do it. Just sitting there,
okay.
yeah, and then all of you can try it as well. Think of your pubic bone in the front, your tailbone at the back, and your two sit bones. Now, first think of drawing the pubic bone towards the tailbone, bringing in the sit bones. So now it's all collected at the center, and now lift it up. So imagine if you're sitting upright that it's traveling up to your belly button. Now release and open. So it's kind of like it's going up, 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 and then release and opens it all out.
So you don't hold it up there. You just kind of...
Well, you can hold it up there. So there's again different training, and the training is very similar. So you can work with pulses.
Okay.
You can work with holds. You can then add to movements. Like you'd say, okay, now engage through the pelvic floor, and now hold it in an all fours position, or in standing, or in lying down. And then you keep training.
Okay.
And then you use this training again, like I mentioned in my previous talk with you. We want to always take it to your level of function. So what is it that you do, and when is it that it forms a problem for you? So we should train the muscles to be ready to support the pelvic floor organs in that state. So if you came with a simple, every time I cough, right? So I'm going to actually prepare you for the cough, right? And then we work towards it. So this is like the absolute baseline. You have a lot of biofeedback tools that you can use to give the person. You can measure the pressure and all of the, all the tools that we can use, and say, okay, now it's contracted. Okay, that's too much. You can knock it off a little bit. So you have that. We have some muscle stimulators that you can work, which is a biofeedback, because it's a very hard space to imagine and to feel.
You did a good job explaining it.
Yeah.
I mean, the bowl, and that was good.
So it's and then, so when I started, I said that what I would look for is the cheat. So if I saw you like drawing your belly button in, I know you're doing it wrong. So a lot of times, because these muscles and these form, like we spoke about the diaphragm in the previous one, the pelvic floor forms a part of your inner core unit. So it's a really, really important set of muscles that we need, and I'll come to that in a little bit. But so we need to work this in sync, right? And we're looking at just giving that training, contraction. So if I overdo it, I might clench my buttock, or I might squeeze into my thigh. Then I know you're cheating. So that's the only visual I can say, Rita.
You have to use the right muscles.
You have to use the right muscles, and the only way I can say you're doing it wrong is if I see the cheat. Not other than, unless I have an internal examination going on and I can feel what you're doing. So if it's really weak, then that's where we start the training from.
Okay.
So that's why it belongs to a very specialized group of trained people to get that activation going. But again, there are different degrees at which a person is at, and it's affecting their health. And therefore, again, assess. I keep saying we need to assess.
Yes, you need to know the baseline of where they're coming from, right?
Right. And the baseline of their problems, their symptoms, etc.
And who do you see? Like, you see a lot of post-pregnancy women, or?
Yes, you could. Because, so I want to talk a little bit about the core for you to understand why this can happen. So you have the pelvic floor at the base, you have the diaphragm at the top. In front, you have another deep inner core muscle that I mentioned in the last talk, the transversus abdominis. And then you have deep spinal muscles. Now, all of these are not connected directly. So the pelvic floor isn't connected to the diaphragm, but it is through our fascial system. Now, what happens when we breathe? So look at the low load that this muscle system could be affected in. When I breathe, my diaphragm, so when I inhale, my diaphragm comes down, right? Now, I have decreased the space in my abdominal area to increase the space in my thoracic cavity for me to take that breath in, okay, and fill my lungs up with air. But in doing that, the minute I do that, I'm compressing my intra-abdominal space because I'm increasing the pressure. So I'm creating what is called an increase in the intra-abdominal pressure, or IAP. Now, if there's increased pressure, right, where's it going to go? It's going to go down, right? So every time I breathe, it's going to press into my pelvic organs, right? So can you imagine every breath you take? Okay.
That's a lot of pressure.
Can make you leak? No, but it doesn't happen like that, right? So what is the main role of the pelvic floor muscles is to create that trampoline kind of effect. So when you breathe, it kind of goes here and the IAP gets distributed around here.
Okay.
This is really important in even managing what's happening to low back pains, right? Because if there's a build-up of pressure, then it's going to, anything in which there's a lot of pressure or a lot of force is going to create some, yeah. So what your fascial system does through these muscular connections, so therefore it's called a myofascial system, it helps in improving and distributing these forces. So that's why we don't have a problem. So when I'm working with pelvic floor health, I'm working with this distribution of forces as well. So it doesn't just end here, like do this, okay? It doesn't end there. So there's a whole sort of physiology behind how you would go with the training.
So it's not just holding your pee when you go to the bathroom.
No, but it works towards making you hold your pee when there isn't a good bathroom in sight.
Yes,
right?
yes, and that we need that.
You need that, right? Yeah, that's how it helps.
So that's another type of incontinence, right? When you just keep on
going so there's frequency, so there are multiple, so again, I don't want to go into that because it's it's too detailed. Yeah. But yes, you could have increased frequency, you could have increased urgency, you could have a feeling of incomplete voiding, like you feel you've gone to the bathroom, you get up, and then you feel like you have to go again because you still feel some pressure. It could be I cough, I sneeze, I lift a weight, and there's a leak. And it applies to your rectum as well. So it's not just with urine, but it's also with feces or farts, so it sounds, oh my God, like, and nobody likes to talk about farts for some reason, but it's a natural release of gas.
But that's a natural release. What does it have to do with
so people have a problem with excessive farting.
Oh, I see.
Right?
Okay.
So it's, so there could be multiple symptoms to this space.
All right.
So pain is on one end, all of that. And then of course it can affect your sexual health, which is again, why can't you talk about it? Because it's a part of your life. So if all of these are there, you definitely need to go and see a pelvic floor specialist. You could do that with first consulting your gynecologist, seeing what has transpired. There are multiple tests, investigations, and there are a lot of pelvic floor, or I should say pelvic health therapists which are there, and yes, even in India.
Okay, Men, you said that men also have pelvic floor issues. Do
Yes.
you help with that as well?
Yes, we do. And again, I'm keeping it to the muscular space, but it's similar. The function is similar, just that they don't have the uterus.
Okay.
Okay,
They
so-
still have the bowl
Yeah.
with all the organs. I really like that
Absolutely, yes,
explanation.
yeah. So there's one less organ.
Yes,
Right.
okay.
There's just one less organ. We're not looking at the uterus.
Okay.
That's about it. Yeah.
So if you, when, usually people have a problem and then they take action, should anyone do it proactively before they have a problem? Maybe
So
before
we teach that in
conceiving?
Pilates.
You teach them? Yes.
We do a lot of pelvic floor awareness
Okay.
and training in Pilates, and it's one of the muscle groups that I teach a lot of my clients with, and then once in a while I'll come to the studio and I'm like, okay, today's class is going to be just about the pelvic floor.
Okay.
So I do that sometimes, but yes, we do teach it a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
So in case you have not seen the first episode, Moushumi Kuvawala is a trained physiotherapist. She's been, in this field for the last 30 years, and about 10 years ago, you started Moshu's Pilates, or is it
Yes.
more?
Yeah, just about.
Yeah.
Yes.
Around 10 years ago, she started Moshu's Pilates, which has branches here in Pune and Bombay. And their USP is that they have physiotherapists, and you get a complete assessment before doing the exercises. And so that wraps it up. Moushumi, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Again, where can people find you?
Where can people find me? People can find me on our website, which is moushuspilates.com. We're on Instagram, and then we have like an education vertical as well. So we are on Moushus Pilates as the Instagram for the studios, and Moushus Pilates _education for our courses if you're interested in learning a little bit more or training to be a Pilates instructor. We offer courses from a UK-based institute known as the Australian Physiotherapy and Pilates Institute. I'm on LinkedIn, and then we're on YouTube, and we have a lot of videos there. Some of what I've spoken about today is there on the different YouTube videos. And then we've supported that with blogs, which is in our blog section on our website. So if you go to a particular blog that interests you, we've tried to also upload a YouTube video to help you understand what exercises you can do along with that.
And we'll put all of that in the show notes. Before we go, I wanted to talk about your anatomy course. If you think Moushumi explained that really well, she has an excellent anatomy course where you have parts that you put together. It's like
Yes, yeah. So we have a couple of anatomy programs, and you could just be an anatomy enthusiast. You don't have to become a Pilates instructor or a physiotherapist to join one of these, but definitely get in touch if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about your body.
Great. Thanks again.
Thank you very much.